Welcome to the Draft Professor channel, home of Epic Mock 26, April 9th, 10th, and 11th.
Well, happy Sunday to everybody. I am here with Jack Brentnall, and we are going to be continuing with round one and round two of Marathon Mock. But Jack, it's been about 7 days since you and I have spoke. How are you feeling on this Sunday, about 3 weeks before the NFL draft?
Yeah, I'm good. I think it's kind of really feels like we are in the home straight now. I have almost finished my evaluations for the draft guide I'm doing over at the Touchdown. So now I've got the joy of pulling all that together into a nice looking PDF. But good. I think maybe we're starting to enter silly season a little bit with some kind of crazy takes from some of the bigger names in the draft community, but that's always par for the course at this stage of the year. So, yeah, just looking forward to getting there now. Really, I think there's a lot still that I think is up for debate. So it's still a interesting time.
So there was a mock draft that was started on a Draft Professor podcast yesterday. Jack and I are going to be continuing that mock today. And ironically, the 10:30 podcast that comes right after this is just going to take the mock, pick it up where we left off. Our hope is that we get through round two, but we are starting halfway through round one. So very quickly, I will review what round one was. So round one so far is Mendoza, Reese, Maui, Noah, Bain, Love, Tate. Casey traded up for Delane, Styles, Ioane, Downs, McCoy, Bailey, Sadiq, Fano, Mesidor, with the Jets on the clock at 16 after taking Reese at 2. Jack, do you have any thoughts on what you think the Jets would do here at pick 16?
I think if you've got, there's obviously going to be a debate about where you're playing Reese, but if you've got Reese, then I think, for me at least, the focus shifts to offense. I think you've got to look at getting a pass catcher. You've obviously got two really good young tackles there. I'd be looking at getting another pass catcher to work alongside Garrett Wilson. So for me, in this spot, Makai Lemon would be the pick.
How high is Lemon on your board?
He'll probably be. Let me have a look. I've got a working board that I'm trying to pull together at the moment. He'll be top 10 on my board, I think, when you account for positional value.
Yeah, so if you're grabbing a top 10 pick at pick 16, that's a really good pick for the Jets. So this is interesting because the group yesterday was not high on Monroe Freeling, and he's available at 17 to the Lions. I'm curious, how high do you have Monroe Freeling graded?
He's kind of later part of the first round for me.
Okay.
Obviously, I think he's earned a lot of buzz over the last month or so. I think kind of probably is now. I don't know if he's now consensus OT1, but I feel like he's probably the favorite to be the first tackle. Depends on how you see Marinoa, but like the favorite to be the first like pure tackle off the board. Now, I suppose, well, is this what I would do if I was running the Lions here? Or
so we're trying to be some combination of predictive, but also align it to your board. So meaning that while every media member has Monroe Freeling not falling past Detroit, if you don't have him graded to take here, like if it's not within what your grading suggests, we should go with a different pick.
So I have one. So Fano's off the board, Mamino's off the board. I have two other tackles graded higher than Freeling, personally.
Okay. So which tackles are they?
So that's Blake Miller from Clemson and Caleb Lemu from Utah.
You like either of them for Detroit?
I mean, what's weird is I think if I was actually picking like who I think Detroit would get, I suppose if Freeling's here, Detroit would probably go Freeling. But the one pick that I kind of feel like I would predict if I was predicting it would be Caden Proctor. I mean, I would not take him here. I'll be honest.
Oh, okay.
But like that seems to be getting quite a bit of buzz at the moment. And I feel like it's one of those like when you get to this stage of the draft, there's probably no smoke without fire. For me, I would probably.
I mean, it's okay. Like, it's okay. So if you have Freeling as the third best available tackle, but you also see the reason why he fits Detroit, we can make that pick. Like, I don't want to talk about it.
I think I'd probably go at this stage. I'd probably go Lomu because. So I have, like I say, I've got a higher grade on Blake Miller, but Miller plays right tackle. I think the value difference between right and left tackle is massively overstated, but I wouldn't want to flip a guy if I don't have to. I don't have a massive gap between the two of them. So I'd probably rather have a natural left tackle in Lomu. And then obviously you've got Penei Sewell at the right tackle spot for Detroit. So Lomu would be the pick there.
Okay. So Caleb Lomu goes to Detroit. We're on the clock for Minnesota at pick 18. I believe like Minnesota needs safety and they need defensive backs overall.
Yep.
I think they could also go a couple of other ways, but Ioane's already off the board. I've seen him mocked here. Jeremiah Love's off the board. I've seen him mocked here. What does your board suggest to you that Minnesota would do?
So I have a couple of corners rated above my next available safety. So for me, like this one is just one where I think it is a perfect marriage of pick and kind of value and scheme fit. I'd be going Avion Terrell from Clemson, the cornerback. I think he is a perfect fit with what Flores wants to do. I think he is, yes, he's not the biggest, but he's great coming downhill, good tackler. Ball production is there, whether that's forced fumbles or picks. Really good athlete. So for me, Terrell, I think it'd be a great fit.
Okay. And the Panthers are on the clock at 19.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one for me. I mean, they can go in a few different directions here. I don't think I'd necessarily would rush to get like a pass catcher here, like a receiver or a tight end. Obviously, with Sadiq off the board and my top two receivers off the board. I think this is one where it depends on your appetite for risk, but for me, Caleb Banks, the defensive tackle from Florida, would be the pick. Now you've got to be comfortable with the medicals here, but to me, I think he is a really talented player who, if he can stay healthy and put those foot injuries behind him, I think he's a great shout for the Panthers.
So I love that pick, and I'm really liking how we kind of split it up, where it's some people's round one board. Yesterday, you have a different version. So everybody knows the order of the players over here on the right. There was another mock draft that was done. So the players are in the approximate order they were taken in the prior mock. So that's where those players are listed there. Okay, so the Cowboys got David Bailey at pick 12. And we are allowed to do trades here. Is there a player here that's dropping that surprises you?
Just looking at my board, I don't think necessarily, or certainly that would fit the Cowboys. I don't think so. That the one that I really like here, and this is definitely going a bit left field in terms of not talent, but in terms of whether we're drafting for need. And I do think personally, I think drafting for need in the first round is a kind of overrated thing to be doing. I think it's all about getting talent and building those kind of cornerstone pieces rather than trying to kind of fit a need. So for me, this is definitely more of a what I would do than I think what will happen. I would be really tempted here by Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M. Obviously, they have CeeDee Lamb. They have franchise tags George Pickens. Whether Pickens is going to stay long term, I don't know. But this is an offense with real talent, and I would rather add to those receivers. It's not that long ago that the Cowboys were picking and CeeDee Lamb fell into their lap in the first round, and it's one of those where it's like, don't overthink it, just take the talent. And I think for me, Concepcion is that kind of player.
Yep, and that's where I was going with are there players dropping? Right? Because I don't know that I've seen wide receiver go to Dallas in too many mocks, but if that's the way that you see the player and the value, that's why we do this as a group.
Yeah.
So Pittsburgh at pick 21. And I know, like, from the Steeler draft professors, they're like, anybody but Ty Simpson is the best pick in the world.
Yeah, it's one of those with Simpson. I'm like, I don't mind it if you're getting him on day 2, but like 21 just to me is. I mean, you've got to feel that Steelers fans, they're probably scarred by the Pickett experiment, which was a similar kind of range, and look how that went. So, for me here, and I know obviously they got Michael Pittman in free agency, but I don't see any. The quarterback is the obvious glaring need, even with Rodgers still on the roster, given how old he is and kind of his longevity. But I would just, again, kind of similar thing to the Cowboys here. I'd build on that wide receiver room, and I would add Jordan Tyson. The injuries are a concern, but I think once you start getting into this range is probably where I'm more comfortable with taking him as a prospect.
Okay. The Chargers on the clock at pick 22.
Yes, this is where for me it does get kind of tricky with, again, another example of you don't want to force a need. If you think what the Chargers are kind of normally mocked here, guards, Ioane is a popular pick. Defensive tackles, I'm not 100% sure there's a defensive tackle that I'm dying to take here. I like Woods, but I'm not 100%. He's definitely lower on my board than he was, 6 months ago or so. So for me, and again, this is definitely me picking a player that I am higher on than the consensus. I would look at it and go, you've got Khalil Mack, who is still good, but he's, 35 years old. I'd be wanting to try and plan for the future at edge. Tui Pelotu's in the last year of his deal. So I'd be looking at an edge, and I would be taking UCF's Malachi Lawrence here.
So Malachi Lawrence going at pick 22 to the Chargers. Okay, so Philadelphia on the clock here at pick 23. There's a lot of draft professors that suggest this would be an offensive tackle. We have a Eagles fan who comments on every Eagles mock draft that we do to let us know that they shouldn't take a tackle. I have a lot of fun running this channel. I really do. What are your thoughts on what you think the Eagles will be looking at here at pick 23?
I mean, I'll be honest, tackle is where my head is at. I don't think there's necessarily an urgent need at any real spot on that roster. There's obviously questions about London Dixon's kind of long-term health and prognosis there. Lane Johnson is still very good, but he's 36. You're not going to get many more years out of him. I don't really see any other spots on the. I mean, you could maybe say they could have some help at safety, but I don't see one that I'm loving here. I think it's just one where it's tackle and build for the future. And again, don't focus on need, focus on value. So for me, I think this is actually a nice one for Blake Miller. Doesn't need to play right away, but he is your natural heir at right tackle when Landon Johnson's retired, or kind of, Lane Johnson rather has kind of got to the end of his career. So I think for me, he's the pick. He can probably play a bit of left tackle if you need to. Obviously, you've got Jordan Mailata there, but he's younger. So yeah, getting the right tackle of the future for me would be the pick here.
Okay. So now Cleveland is on the clock at pick 24. Cleveland selected Carnell Tate at the top of round 1.
So this is one of those where I'm like, I think this would be the ideal situation for Cleveland. you want to come away from that first round with a pass catcher and a tackle. So I think for me, this is one of those, don't overthink it. Let's get Monroe Freeling off the board. This is the kind of range where I'm more comfortable with him. And I think he'd be a really nice fit in Cleveland.
Okay. So 2 tackles go off the board back to back, and we've had 3 tackles go within the last 10 picks. Is anybody trading? Like, is there a run here? Like, does somebody need to come up and get Ian Achor?
So I'm quite a bit lower on him than consensus. So I wouldn't. This is where, like, for me, it's like that's where the tackle class kind of cuts off.
Got it. So you're not that high on Proctor either.
No, I have a second round. I'd kind of have him in the kind of 45 to 50 range, probably, maybe a little bit higher. But not someone I'd really want to take first round. And you also get that weird thing where there's not necessarily, once Cleveland's got Freeling, I wouldn't say there's necessarily loads of teams that have an urgent need at tackle. Those that had maybe got more of a need have done a decent enough job of patching it up, I'd say, at least in the off season. So, once Freeling's off the board, I think I'd probably be waiting for a tackle.
Okay. Thoughts on what you think the Chicago Bears are going to do here?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one where, for me, I would be looking at, can you add someone along the defensive line? Now, in an ideal world, it'd probably be someone off the edge. Obviously, I know they've got Sweat and Odeyingbo, but I don't think there's anybody here that I love at least as a fit in Dennis Allen's scheme off the edge, because you're looking more at those kind of heavy-handed, bigger edges. I would probably, I think, say that this is where the Peter Woods slide stops. I think you're still getting a good talent on the interior, kind of your natural 3-tech who I think this is the kind of range again where, preseason we'd have had him in the top 5, but I think now I'm more comfortable.
Okay, so give me a minute here. I wanted to make sure that my panes got frozen. There we go. Okay, yeah, that's better. Okay, so with the Bills here at 26, I am going to be predicting a trade up here for Ty Simpson. Buffalo needs to trade down. So I'm going to be looking at the Bills and the Cardinals on the draft chart here. So the Cardinals have picked 34, which is 174, and then there needs to be 50 points exchanged. So the 4th rounder isn't enough. The 3rd rounder is too expensive. So if it was the 3rd rounder, Buffalo just have to send, and it's a quarterback, so there's a tax. So it's the 2nd and the 3rd. Okay, so
and you're paying obviously to get that 5th-year option. So
yep,
there's that premium as well.
Yep. So we're gonna go here. We're gonna go here. So Arizona traded up with Buffalo, and I will highlight those picks because they were involved in a trade, and we will go back to the regular draft. So the trade up last year for Jackson Dart was actually more expensive than this trade up. So last year when the Giants traded up for Jackson Dart, they gave up a 3rd round pick last year and a 3rd round pick in this draft to trade up. And in this one, Arizona only had to give up a current year 3rd. So that's actually, relative to what we've seen in recent past, that's actually a trade that actually heavily favors Arizona. But Buffalo gets that extra pick this year that it is needing, and this is going to be Ty Simpson. And basically, Buffalo's entire draft strategy hinges on somebody trading up for a quarterback.
Yeah.
Especially with KC Concepcion off the clock there. Okay. back to regularly scheduled programming. The 49ers are on the clock at pick 27. What are your thoughts on what they're going to do, Jack?
Yeah, so again, I think you'll often see tackles mocked here. As I said, I don't think there's anybody I'm dead set on from a tackle perspective. For me, I think one of the areas of kind of concern perhaps is the interior of the offensive line. I really like Dominic Pooney. Obviously, Jake Brendel is older, and Connor Colby at left guard. I think you can upgrade there. So I would at this spot, because I am quite high on him, I would take Emmanuel Pregnon from Oregon, the guard. I think he'd be a kind of plug and play guy for a team that is built to try and compete now.
Okay, so Emmanuel Pregnon going at pick 27 to the 49ers. The Texans are on the clock at pick 28.
This is one that I think is a tricky pick, because I don't think they need. I think there's value at corner and safety here potentially, but I don't think they need it. Like they have maybe the best secondary in football, certainly in the conversation.
I've seen Thieneman mocked to the Texans by Texans people.
Interesting. I mean, I suppose it depends on how you feel about kind of Kalen Bullock and Reed Blankenship. Like for me, Thieneman is probably best in that kind of. Yeah, I like him as a kind of traditional kind of post safety, but then that's kind of Bullock's role. I also like Blankenship, so I'm kind of.
Okay.
I can see it. It's one of those like right, make the rich richer.
And it may have also been before they acquired Blankenship. I don't know that I've seen, like, Thieneman doesn't usually drop this far in other mocks that I've done, but I can tell that maybe you're just slightly lower on him when you didn't like take him for Dallas or Minnesota earlier.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where it's like, if you get past a couple of those teams, it's quite easy for safeties to fall. And I like Thieneman. I'd have him kind of in that first round conversation, but it's also then just, do you prefer a player in a more premium position? So like for me here, now you look at the edge rushing duo for the Texans. You've got Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson. Obviously, Hunter is 32. He's on an extension now, a very well paid extension. Anderson is obviously going to be there for the long term. But how many edge rushers do you see producing at a high level well into their 30s? I'm not sure there's that many. And there is absolutely no harm in having a third guy. When you look at the depth behind them, it is perilously thin. And if Hunter or Anderson were to go down with injury, they don't really have much off the edge. So for me, I would be looking at Cassius Al here. I think I'd be like, if I'm getting a guy as a third guy in a rotation, I want someone with juice and who can win with speed, and that's him. I don't need him to be an every down player, certainly early on. So I think for me, that's where there's the value.
Okay. And then the Chiefs are on the clock at 29. Kansas City traded up to get Mansour Delane earlier in round 1. What are your thoughts on what the Chiefs would do here based upon your board?
I'd be tempted to kind of double dip in the secondary. I think for me, I'd be considering Thieneman here, but I think it's a tricky one, this one.
And from what I'm hearing from the Chiefs, they're going to be focusing on core positions, right? Because they have a lot of draft capital, and like I think it would be the opposite of safety or opposite of running back.
Interesting.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think in this spot then, I would be looking at a guy like Traden Stukes from
Mm.
so obviously I know some might have him as a safety. For me, I think he's a nickel. And yes, there will be some who say, well, nickels aren't that valuable. I think they're incredibly valuable in the kind of modern NFL. I almost think they're as valuable as an outside corner because the stuff you're asking them to do is, I mean, they've got so much more responsibility, whether that's in the run fit, the kind of speed at which they've got to process everything, taking on blocks, all that sort of stuff. So I think he'd be an interesting fit.
I love it. We are definitely on like already with like the last, well, definitely with Stooks. This is the first time I have seen Stooks go in round one. And that's why we do these with different draft professors, just to get an idea as to where everybody's board is and where the value on the board is. Okay, so Miami took Jermod McCoy earlier in round one. What do you think Miami would be doing at the back of round one here?
I think it'd be one of those, if there's a receiver you like, then I'd probably consider them here. But there's not anybody that I'm like jumping to take, especially in terms of knowing how that front office works and thresholds and everything. They're obviously kind of Packers coded. I think this would be where I'd stop the slide for Thieneman. I just think Jeff Hafley is all about kind of having that defense with those guys that you can trust on the back end, the true post safety. Thieneman is the kind of guy, if you got Thieneman there and then you've got McCoy earlier, like you've got the bones of a really good defense. And I think that's where they're probably going to want to build things, given Hafley's kind of leanings, and then figure out the offense as and when Willis kind of see how he does.
Okay, so the Super Bowl runner-up, New England Patriots. I love saying that. Patriots on the clock here at pick 31. So I think the Patriots need edge. They need wide receiver. Rumor is they don't have a left tackle. What are your thoughts on where the board is and what the Patriots need?
I think if this is how the board falls, I would be looking at receiver. I know obviously they got Romeo Doubs in free agency, but I think this is one, just invest in receiver, give Drake May more weapons. I'd be going Omar Cooper Jr. at this spot.
Okay, and then the last pick of round one, Seattle Seahawks, Super Bowl champions.
Yeah, so this is a pick and a player I've kind of come around on. I think this is a similar conversation to kind of how I was saying with the Texans, where like you want guys who can. You look at how they won the Super Bowl, and it's having that front seven with the ability to rotate, bring guys in, have juice off the ball. I want guys who are able to kind of come in, add value in those kind of high leverage situations as pass rushers. If you're looking to kind of win another Super Bowl, that's the kind of stuff you need. You need that depth and that kind of the hockey line type approach. You look at their edge group. Obviously, DeMarcus Lawrence is older. Uchenna Nwosu's 30. I'm not sure there's necessarily guys there that are, obviously Boye Mafe's gone. I'd be wanting to replenish that and kind of get more talent off the edge. And this is where I would take a guy like R. Mason Thomas, because I think, again, if you're talking about a guy who you can have as part of a rotation and not be trying to talk him into an every down role, that's exactly what I would want. And I know some might say it's rich for this kind of range, but if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, you need those guys who are closers.
It's not rich because he would have been one of the 2 or 3 guys I was going to look at 34. So you definitely sniped one of the guys that Buffalo would be targeting. So I don't think that is, let me rephrase that. That is a really good pick for this range of the draft, because I think from, right around pick 26 all the way through pick 50, a lot of these guys are going to be graded similar, and the explosive players are definitely going to get pushed up. So
Yeah,
I
and it's
love.
that kind of thing where like position, isn't it? Like he's so like I say, this is a work in progress board, but I've got Thomas at 38 on my board. So there's obviously a little bit higher. But then you look at some of the guys in the positions above it. I mean, it might end up being that he's a little bit higher than them in the end, but positional value takes more of a kind of hold, especially when you talk about that fifth year option. So it just makes sense to me.
Okay, so the Jets have taken Reese and Lemon, and they're back on the clock at pick 33.
So I think they need help at corner. I don't love their cornerback room. Obviously, if it's going to work with our England there, you need to get that defense humming. I think this is the kind of spot where there's a few cornerbacks on the board, but in terms of like a good fit, I think it's Colton Hood from Tennessee. I have like the next cluster of corners all graded very similarly. He just feels like a really good fit.
Okay, so I am on the clock for the Bills here. And if there was somebody that would trade up, I would trade down again. Like there is a guy, like I know who the pick is going to be. I'm like looking around and just kind of dotting I's, crossing T's. Buffalo needs edge. According to me, they still need to address wide receiver. We still need to get some day one, day two cost control in the wide receiver room. But there's not a receiver here. If Omar Cooper Jr. was here, I would be considering him. If R. Mason Thomas was here, I'd be considering him. But those two guys went off 3 picks earlier. Feeneman would have been a maybe, right? So, like a lot of the guys, Jack, that you had graded, that you were taking them, within the last 5 to 10 picks. Yeah. Buffalo is implementing an odd front defense. We do not have a true nose tackle on the roster. We are going to do Caden McDonald from Ohio State at pick 34. And that solves a need, even though linebacker, edge, and wide receiver were all considered. So the thoughts on what you think the Titans are going to do?
So who did they get in the first round?
I believe it was Ruben Bain.
Interesting. This is a tricky spot. This. Then again, this is one where I'm just like, so for me at this spot, if you look at that kind of Titans roster, it's all about getting Cam Ward to work, right? That needs to be, for me, that's priority number one, is like building around your quarterback. I think he showed real flashes as a rookie. I think you want to show that he can kind of be something. I think if you're going to do that, you need to kind of look at surrounding him with talent. I know they've invested in Wan'Dale Robinson, which was an expensive deal, but they've obviously got him now. I like DK and I like Iomana. Obviously, they've still got Calvin Ridley, but he's kind of getting on a bit. To me, this is probably this definitely will seem kind of rich to some. I'm definitely considering, again, like I would have gone corner, but they've kind of invested in that. They've got a pair of starters that they paid handsomely. So with Calvin Ridley getting older, I would look at wide receiver. And for me, the top graded wide receiver I have left on my board is Ted Hurst from Georgia State.
So I like that. So Ted Hurst going to the Titans at 35. The Raiders took Mendoza in round 1, and now they're on the clock in round 2.
Yeah, this is like an odd one because there's obviously a bunch of directions they could go, but I'm not sure there's necessarily one that is like jumping out at me. The one that I think I'll look to here is corner. Obviously got Teron Johnson in to play the nickel. Eric Stokes is there, kind of playing on the boundary. I'd just be adding talent to corner and seeing if I can kind of assemble a room. I know some really like Darian Porter. I'm not as keen, but the depth, I think that's the other thing. The depth beyond those guys is like non-existent, really. So for me, like I said, there's a cluster of guys I'd be looking at here. I would probably go with Chris Johnson from San Diego State.
Now, do you think there's a team that needs something to where they're going to trade up? Because, like, there are a couple teams coming up, specifically the Giants, where the Giants don't have any more day 2 picks. If they could move out of this pick, they would do it in a heartbeat, I think.
I think it would. It's that thing with this draft, which just feels like I don't think it's a bad draft. I know the kind of people have said, "Oh, it's not a good draft." I don't think it's a bad draft. I think it's obviously lacking some of those blue chip guys, but it almost feels to me like when you get here, like there's no. You look at that list on the right. There's nobody in there that I'm banging the table to jump up for and pay kind of a premium to acquire. I feel like almost all of those groups, in terms of position groups, there might be a guy who is left. Like I really like CJ Allen, right? But do you trade it for a linebacker? Probably not. And I'm a big Josiah Trotter fan, so it's like, okay, if you miss out on Allen, you can get Trotter a little bit later, save on kind of trading up. So I don't know if there is. I think this is going to be, I think, a theme of this draft, which is like everybody wanted to trade down. Once you get out of that 5th-year option situation in the first round, I think it might be tricky to find partners.
Okay.
So with that, if the Giants are going to stick and pick, which obviously I don't think would be an ideal situation for them, this is one where I'd probably be looking at non-premium picks. Just looking through my board, it's not the premium positions that are still there. It's probably, I think at this spot for me, this would be a case of investing in the offensive line. Obviously, you got Andrew Thomas there, Illuminor at right tackle. I do have some questions about kind of guard. I'm not a big John Runyon fan. He's obviously only got 1 year left on his deal. I think he can improve at right guard as well. So I think this is a Chase Bisontis spot for me.
Love that pick. So there are some draft professors. Owen and Jerry Ostrowski have Bisontis as interior offensive lineman 1. He's the third interior offensive lineman off the board in round 2 in this mock. Yeah. And basically, Bisontis comes in with a higher floor, whereas Ioane has a higher ceiling. And that was how they made that distinction. Like Jerry, Ioane is Jerry's favorite player in the whole draft, but he has Bisontis graded high.
Interesting. Yeah, I do like Bisontis a lot. I think he's just feels like quite a clean projection that can kind of work in any scheme as well.
So I'm seeing, like, from a Buffalo standpoint, right? I'm seeing some players drop, and I think Buffalo is going to trade up into round 2. I'm just looking for the spot where Buffalo's trading up. But there's a couple guys that I don't want to fall to round 3. Now, Buffalo has the first pick of round 3 with that trade with the Cardinals. But I'm seeing a player, and I don't know that player is going to make it to round 3. So I am looking for a trade up. I'm not sure that I'm going to do it, but there's a couple of guys that I want to come up and get. But it's not going to be to pick 38 to Houston. So what do you think? Houston is 2 second-round picks, and we got them Cassius Howell in round 1. What do you think Houston's going to do here?
I think at some point you have to look at that offensive line. I think obviously they're hopeful for what Ursary can be at left tackle. They've signed Wyatt Teller, but he's obviously not a long-term solution at guard. Again, they've got Ed Ingram there, but I think it's a tricky one. I'd be in an ideal world, they'll be looking at a center, but I don't think there's a center that I'd want to take here. So then it's like, I mean, yeah, my highest graded center is Matt Goldman from Michigan State, but I think this would be a bit rich for him. I like this center class, but it feels like a group where it's kind of more deep than it is top heavy. This is tough, man. This is tough. This is one of those things where it's like there's not an obvious. You can't necessarily go really badly wrong, but I don't think there's like an obvious.
So yeah, and they need interior defensive line help.
Yeah.
Do you have Kristen Miller graded high enough to take here at pick 38?
So I have like a cluster of 5 interior offensive line, all graded in the kind of. I mean, they're not necessarily like true second round grades, but they will be second rounders in terms of where they land on my board. So it's just kind of picking your flavor. Those are Lee Hunter, Caden McDonald, Darrell Jackson Jr., Kristen Miller, and Grayson Holt. And obviously, Caden McDonald's gone off the board. I would probably, out of those guys, I mean, it depends what you want, really, in terms of that skill set.
Well, they love McDonald. The number of times I have seen Caden McDonald go to the Texans in a mock is a lot. So I mean, there was a reason that I picked him for Buffalo. I know that there would be a lot of teams in this range that would want McDonald.
Yeah, exactly. So. I think at this range, I'd probably like stick with my board. I'd go Lee Hunter here.
Okay. I don't know how far Texas Tech is from Houston. So I'm going to say low moving expenses, but then somebody's going to say like they're on opposite sides of the state of Texas. So, okay. So Cleveland, this is their 3rd pick of the mock. Cleveland has done Carnell Tate and Monroe Freeling. It wouldn't surprise me if Cleveland doubled down on wide receiver, but what are your thoughts? Like, because I think interior offensive line has gone thin. Like once Basantis goes off the board, some people have Dunker this high, but I think this is really rich. So what are you thinking Cleveland would do here at pick 39?
It's difficult because there is an interior offensive lineman that I like, which is Jalen Farmer. From Kentucky. But I don't know whether, like, they've obviously got Elton Jenkins now. Obviously, he can play kind of a bit of everything. But I imagine he'll be kind of settling in at guard, or maybe, I don't know. Who have the Browns got as their slated to start at center? They have
if
Jenkins
you like. If you like Golbin this high, is your grade on Golbin like top 40?
No, I'd have him kind of like he'd be in that kind of top of round 3 range.
Got it. Okay.
I think here, I mean, it's tricky. This it depends.
Do they need a corner?
So I don't know if they necessarily. They could take a nickel. And in which case, if they take a nickel, so they've got on the outside, they've got Tyson Campbell and obviously Denzel Ward. I don't love the depth behind those guys either. I would at this spot, I'd be looking at Keith Abney from Arizona State, because for me, a guy like Abney, he obviously played outside. In college, he's a little bit smaller, but he's super fluid, good run defender. I think he'll play nickel in the NFL. So I think he'd be a nice fit
there. And now Kansas City, with their 3rd pick of this mock, they have taken Mansour Delane, and then they took they took Stukes. So they took Mansour Delane, trade on Stukes. They have a new defensive backfield.
I'd be going edge here.
I was about to say, they always complain about their pass rush. And I know that there's some Chiefs draft professors that are really high in TJ Parker.
So it's one of those where, like, this is where I'm going to kind of overlook my own board a little bit. I think TJ Parker is the one, because he is just a fit for what they want. And there are guys I maybe prefer, but he is exactly what they want in an edge. And I think that just makes so much sense.
Okay. And now the Cincinnati Bengals are on the clock at pick 41. They took Caleb Downs in round 1. This pick will not be Chase Besantis, because Chase Besantis went 4 picks before. But if Ryan Sparks is listening, I would just pick Chase Besantis here just to troll you, because you complain about it whenever we draft an offensive lineman to the Bengals. But Jack, what are your thoughts on like defensive tackle or edge or linebacker here for the Bengals?
I think it's one where, like, I could potentially defensive tackle. I think that the edge, I don't love their edge room, but equally I'm not sure I'd want to pull the ripcord on Shamar Stewart this early. Obviously they've got Maffei. I'd kind of want to give it another year and see what Murphy and Stewart can do. There's a part of me that wants to just kind of keep investing in the secondary and kind of add another corner in there. The defense was so bad last year that I'm not sure you can go far wrong by investing in that. Offensive line is always a conversation with the Bengals. I think, like, it's between 2 players for me. One is, as I mentioned earlier, Jalen Farmer from Kentucky, the guard. I think, like, that's like they like those kind of guys, those kind of big, he's in that kind of mold of like the big bruising mauler, the Orlando Brown, the Amarius Mims type. And then I don't know, who they got as their nickel? Yeah, see, that's the other thing, is like, do you invest in the secondary again? I think that's probably what that's probably where I'd go.
Which nickel do you like at pick 41 here?
For me, it would have to be D'Angelo Pons.
Okay.
I just think he is. I know he's small, but like, he is so smart. He is an unbelievable tackler, and that to me, and he kind of has that toughness beyond his size. To me, that is exactly what you want in a guy who is going to play the nickel, kind of in the modern NFL.
So the Bengals are selecting D'Angelo Pons. Correct?
Yep.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you were just talking about him or that was the pick.
Yeah,
I asked the question and I couldn't tell if that was the actual pick or not.
Yeah, no, that's where I go, yeah.
Okay. Saints took Sonny Styles in round 1. They're on the clock at pick 42.
Which is one of those things where I feel like there is value at linebacker, but I'm not taking 2 linebackers in my first 2 picks. I think this is one where you've just got to add another wide receiver alongside Chris Olave. And I wouldn't overthink this one. I think Denzel Boston is the pick.
Drew will love that pick, because
Denzel
Boston is Drew's wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I saw that, which is interesting. Yeah, I think this is the kind of the range I get much more comfortable taking him. And I think but I think also what I love about that fit is like he's a really nice stylistic fit with Olave. Like, they are like a nice pairing.
Okay, so Miami is on the clock for their 3rd pick. And I need to refresh myself as to who Miami took.
I think it was Thieneman and someone. I can't remember who the first pick was.
Oh, it was McCoy. McCoy
and Thieneman, yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna. I mean, I don't know. This might delight Miami fans. It might anger Miami fans. I don't know. I'm gonna still keep going with the defensive side of the ball. Like I say, that front office comes from Green Bay, and I think it's one of those where there is a type that they like It's not always my cup of tea, but I think when you get into this range, this is kind of what I'd be looking at. I would be going with Keldrick Folk here. I think he is exactly the sort of guy. Again, this is like putting a little bit of my own board in there, but also like thinking about how that front office works. That is the kind of guy that will be a Dolphins type now. Very much like the kind of edges that Packers have drafted in recent years.
Actually, getting Falk at pick 43 to me feels like incredible value. There's so many people that will take him in the top 20 for him to fall to 43. It's actually quite a good pick. Because, like, I know Falk to Dallas seems like a really good default pick with either of their picks if the board doesn't fall correctly.
Yeah.
So, okay, so the Jets making their 4th pick. And again, like the Jets don't pick again till round 4. So if there's a team that would trade up, this pick is for sale. I'm like looking at the board, but nobody I'm trading up for. Like I'm looking, and this, I love a lot of the players here, but like the Jets are going to be taking like the rest of day 2 off if they make a pick here at 44.
Yeah, and I think this is one where if you can trade down, then I think a great idea. But like I say, it's just looking at that group, and I'm not sure I necessarily.
I do have a question. What is your corner board looking like right now? Who are your best available corners, and is there a teardrop that's about to happen?
Hood's gone, Stuke's gone, Hood's gone, Johnston's gone, Abney's gone, Pons is gone. I mean, I'd be open to taking potentially, it's maybe a little rich. I'd be open to taking Julian Neal here.
Because I don't think the Jets haven't taken. Oh wait, they took Colton Hood earlier in round 2.
Yeah.
But what I was thinking is, would a team, if there's not a lot of corners left, and there's a team here that needs a corner, like for example, Green Bay needs a corner.
Yeah,
are they going to wait? Are they going to wait for somebody to drop, or do they have to go get a guy?
Yeah, I'm just looking at my board, and there's quite a chunky drop off to the next. So the next corner I've got after Neal is Brandon Cisse, but there is a decent size drop off between the two at the moment. Yeah, I think the Packers might move up in this spot. I think this is one of those where like 52 is a really odd spot for Green Bay, where I think they might miss out on some of the guys that they are kind of needing to get. And I'd rather, given how much they need a corner, I'd probably rather just trade up. I mean, it's 8 picks? You're not going to be paying crazy prices for that.
So they've got to move up 24 points worth, which is the round 4 pick.
Yeah. Which is one of those where it's like, it's probably not ideal, because then you don't have a 4th, then you've only got a 2nd, 3rd, a 5th, and 6th and 7th. But like, I think it's probably worth it just to get the guy. Like, I just think the drop off to 52 is probably more concerning than the value of a 4th.
And then it was
4th round, that one. Yeah,
this one. So the trade was here. Okay, so the Packers traded up to pick 44. What corner are they taking?
Julian Neal from Arkansas. I think he's a natural fit with the kind of the way they want to run their defense. Long, strong, physical. Comfortable in run support. I think he'd be a good shout.
Okay, and now the Baltimore Ravens are on the clock at 45. Baltimore in round 1. Took Spencer Fano.
So obviously they have invested at edge with Trey Hendrickson after the Max Crosby debacle. I think I'd be interested in looking at kind of what they can do on defense. They might not go for another edge because they've obviously got Mike Green, who I wasn't the biggest fan of, but
Madubuike leaves a huge hole on the interior of their defense.
Yeah, he does. You obviously got Travis Jones, who kind of fills that nose tackle type role. This might be a, I mean, yeah, this is a Kristen Miller spot, I think, isn't it? I think that's a nice pairing, and I think he's a kind of good option to add into that front.
So we are at pick 46 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not overthinking this one at all. This is one of those easy ones. If the board falls this way, it's CJ Allen, linebacker from Georgia. They need a linebacker. I think getting him here is really good value. I'd have him higher than this on my board, but it's just kind of positional value and some other bits suppressing the position.
Okay, and the Indianapolis Colts at pick 47.
I think they could be looking to invest in defensive line. Like
JT doesn't like CJ Allen. So JT, drop into the chat what you don't like about CJ Allen. Jack, what do you like about CJ Allen?
I don't know. I feel like he's sometimes getting a bit kind of overhit. I think the pro day kind of got him a lot of backlash for some reason. I think he's maybe a little more limited than the kind of two top linebackers for me. But he's really explosive. I think he's a powerful and willing tackler. I think his pursuit speed, I think his angles are great. I think he adds value as a blitzer. I mean, he's not the biggest playmaker in coverage. I mean, there's very few linebackers that are, and those that are go very, very early. Size is maybe not quite ideal. He's got kind of bit of a boxier, kind of stockier frame. But I think he's just a very, very dependable guy who played in a pro style scheme. So I think that'd be why the pick for me. I don't quite know why Chris Sims didn't even have him in like his top 7 linebackers this year. But
well, yeah. Chris Sims left a lot of people out, and
he did. Yeah,
I am happy the draft professors are not clickbait trolls.
Yeah,
right. We're not going to be hot takey like Chris Sims needs to be to get his mouse clicks. So back to this mock, Indianapolis Colts at pick 47. It's their first pick of the draft.
Yeah.
Thoughts on what you think they would do?
I mean, you look at the defensive line, your 2 defensive tackles are both over. DeForest Buckner's 32, Grover Stewart's 33, both in the final year of their deal. I would be, and this is where my personal evaluation comes into it. This is me getting a defensive tackle. This is Darrell Jackson from Florida State.
I love that pick. And as soon as you began to go defensive tackle, I'm like, okay, which one does Jack? Oh yeah,
yeah.
And that's actually a pretty good pick because I know there are some Falcons people that will take Darrell Jackson Jr. at pick 48. So, because they need the same archetype.
Yeah.
And this defensive tackle board is getting really thin right now.
Yeah.
We've had 3 go off the board in the last like 17 picks.
And it is right. This is where it does get like, yeah.
Yep.
Tricky.
So Atlanta at 48. So they need wide receiver, corner, and defensive tackle.
Yeah. This is where the board gets tricky, right? Because like,
and they also need an edge.
They do. So see, this is where it does get tricky again, because like for me, the highest graded edge I've got on the board is Jayshon Barham from Michigan, but I just don't like the scheme they run. I don't think it's much more of a kind of attacking scheme, more static. I think I'd be looking at an edge here, and I'd go as much as I prefer Barham as a player, I'd go Gabe Akers from Illinois. I think we obviously no idea what's going to happen with James Pierce. I think get a player like Akers in there. Like, you can never have too many edges, right? Even if Pierce comes back and he's can put all that stuff behind him, like, you can't have too much pass rush. So
Okay. And then Vikings on the clock at pick 49.
okay, now this is maybe where Barham comes off the board. I'm just going to look at there. Yeah, this is where Barham comes off the board. You've got Andrew Van Ginkel. He's 31. I think Barham's kind of a similar type player, that kind of hybrid edge. Exactly what you want in a Brian Flores scheme. Someone who can rush the passer, who can drop into coverage, who can play the run. He is designed for that disguise heavy, sim pressure, blitz heavy type defense.
Okay. See, and as soon as you started talking Barham, I'm like, oh, Buffalo's got to go trade up. Two edges that I was hoping that were going to fall to Buffalo.
Barham would be the perfect pick for Buffalo, I think. I really do.
Well, and I was about to orchestrate a trade up to 50, but Barham gets sniped at 49. So that was a really good pick. Okay, so Detroit at pick 50.
Yeah, I still have questions about like their cornerback room. Obviously, they've got DJ Reed. He's getting older. Terrion Arnold hasn't been what we perhaps hoped. I think there's no harm in adding more talent to that room, which for me would be, again, it's a little bit rich, but I'd be looking at Brandon Cisse here, but I'm just looking at who else is on the board. Like, I don't think I'd be going a wide receiver. I don't think they need a safety. With who did we take earlier for the Lions?
I think it was a tackle.
Lomu.
Yeah, we took
Lomu. So you're not going to be taking a tackle. So if you look at that board, it's like,
is this? Do you have Zion Young graded high enough to take here?
Yeah, he'd be in the conversation. He's probably lower than this on my board, but if you're looking like the guys that we're talking about here are like Cisse, I've got like 3 or 4 picks higher, but I'd probably, I mean, Young is the most Lions coded pick here, I think.
Oh, yes, he is. Yes.
Yeah, we'll go Young. We'll keep that edge rush going.
Yep. Okay.
3 in a row.
Panthers at pick 51. The Panthers took Caleb Banks in round 1.
So I'm going to go a bit. Is this left?
They need a linebacker.
Oh, yeah. Who've we got? Let's have a look.
So Anthony Hill and Rodriguez are both here.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder, do they? So I'd be tempted by a linebacker, but then there is a part of me, and I'm gonna listen to the voice in my head, which is get another wide receiver. I think Coker is brilliant. I think McMillan's great. I would be looking at a guy who I think is a perfect complement to both of those, Jeremy Bernard from Alabama. I think he is your kind of prototypical Z receiver, which is exactly what they want as a kind of complement to McMillan and Coker.
Okay. And we will go a couple more picks and then we'll pause, and the next podcast will pick up the mocks. So you want to go ahead and make the Jets pick here at 52. The Jets have selected so far Reese, Lemon, and Hood.
So I think at this spot, I'd be, who have we got left on the board? You know what I think? Let's look at who they got safety wise. I mean, they've got Andre Cisco, I suppose. I would consider, I'd consider a safety here. which for me would be Zakee Wheatley from Penn State,
Okay. I like
which
it.
is higher than McNeil Warren, but they is
Well,
just slightly higher on my board.
and again, we're using your board, and that is the idea behind going from podcast to podcast. Is different people have different players valued, and we're going to be putting a mock draft together that nobody's ever seen before because we're using a lot of different boards to do it. I absolutely love it. Okay, and then Pittsburgh will be the final pick, and then the final 11 picks will be done by the 10:30 podcast. So Pittsburgh in round 1 took Jordan Tyson.
Mm.
And then
So-
Pittsburgh has 3 round 3 picks. So they basically get to own day 2, but what do you think Pittsburgh would do here?
I like looking at their who do we get in first round? Remind me. Tyson.
Tyson.
Yeah, Tyson.
You like Ian Otshore at the back of round 2, or you don't like him this much? Because
not this much for me. He'd be kind of he'd be a bit lower. He'd be kind of third round for me. I think the tools are exciting. I think I'm less willing to buy in on the kind of the tape at the moment.
Same question, Caden Proctor, because they don't necessarily like Broderick Jones.
Yeah, you know what? This is not a bad spot at all for Proctor. I think this would be a decent value. I think Jones is in the last year of his deal as well. Yeah, I think Proctor. Let's go with Proctor at this point.
Okay. So Jack, this was a lot of fun. I mean, we could keep going, but I think this is a good spot to pause.
Sure.
So I like doing this because I get to begin to learn, like, okay, Jack's higher on these 7 or 8 guys, and I'm sure when we do live coverage of the NFL draft, if some of the guys that you're higher on get grabbed, like the Darrell Jackson Juniors or the Zakee Wheatleys in round 2, I will definitely be shouting you out. So I love being able to do this. Do you want to take a few minutes, introduce yourself to everybody that's watching, let them know how they can find all of your draft content at the Touchdown?
Sure, yeah. So, I head up NFL draft content over at the touchdown.co.uk, which is the UK's kind of largest NFL and NFL draft site. I am in charge of pulling together the draft guide for that again this year. So that is currently up to 600 and something pages. I'm just in the process of kind of filling out all the charts and all the bits there. So that will be all up for sale early April is what I'm telling myself. I'm not committing to an exact date, but it'll be the biggest one we've done so far, like probably nearly 250 players by the time we've done it. So if you're into kind of any draft content, which you will be if you're watching this, hopefully something you'll enjoy. And then all my other stuff kind of on Twitter, and then I'm here every Sunday.
So I want to thank everybody for watching. So this is a marathon mock. So this meant that we started the mock draft on yesterday's Draft Professor podcast. Jack continued with most of round 2 today. The next podcast, which actually starts in 20 minutes, is just going to pick up the mock from where we left off, but they're going to use their board. So basically each round is going to be done by somebody with a different board. And we're going to kind of piece together a mock draft. And then the night podcast tonight at 8 p.m. is going to continue into rounds 4 and 5. And then there's another podcast that's actually going to do rounds 6 and 7. And the person that does round 6 and 7, it's not going to be a Draft Professor podcast. It's somebody that's podcasted with us before, but he also has his own gig. So he's just going to kind of fill out the mock. So when you look at the results, which will be posted to Twitter, you will see, let's say, an interpretation of who saw value in what round. And it's just a really good way to learn about the volatility of player rankings and things of that nature. We're going to be doing another marathon mock actually starting tomorrow. The Monday 9 p.m. podcast is going to start over with a round one. And we're going to be doing the same exercise all next week. So with that being said, for Jack Brenton, myself, and the 85 podcasters at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy your Sunday, and we'll see you on a podcast again in about 15 minutes. Thank you, everybody.
Welcome to the Draft Professor channel, home of Epic Mock 26, April 9th, 10th, and 11th.